What's going on, everybody? Today I'll talk about some changes that are being rolled out to Alliance Quest. There's some changes coming to maps 2 through 6 that I'll briefly go over: an updated Glory Store, updated rank rewards, and finally the addition of map 7. The best change that players are going to immediately notice is the massive cost reduction to participate in maps 4, 5, and 6. Essentially, all three of these maps are just being brought down a level to make way for the new map 7. So map 4 is now going to be completely free to run across the board, similar to how map 3 is today. Map 5 is no longer going to have any battle chip cost associated to it. That's right, let me say that again. No more battle chip fees if you run map 5. The loyalty is being reduced by 60%, and the gold fees are being cut nearly in half. So if you run map 5 and you're having gold issues, I expect those issues to pretty much go away with the reduction of gold they have to donate, and now being able to actually open up arena crystals instead of having to donate those battle chips. Yeah, I think that's going to solve the problem for a lot of players. Map 6 is getting a similar treatment where the battle chip cost is going down by 65%. The new cost is going to be what the old map 5 cost was. The loyalty is not quite being reduced as much. It is getting a 37.5% reduction, which is pretty big, but yeah, it's still going to be pretty costly to run map 6. And the gold cost for map 6 is also not quite being brought down to the same levels of map 5, but it is seeing a massive reduction. This chart is a little bit deceiving. The chart says it's being reduced by 41%, but you're also getting some gold back for completing map 6, which previously you weren't getting any of that gold back. So to give some idea about how big this reduction is for map 6 players, you know, previously it cost 500,000 gold every cycle of AQ you know, for each player, right? Now it's going to cost a little bit under 300,000 gold, but if all three battle groups complete the map 100% all 5 days, you're getting back an additional 100,000 gold. So it's going to be less than 200,000 gold, down from 500,000 gold. That is a huge deal, right? And now is also a great time to try out map 6 if you've never tried it before, because 5 of the nodes are being removed from the map. It's not the biggest deal, but hey, any less energy that you need to get through the map is going to help people complete it that much easier. You know, it's not going to feel quite as hard to reach the end point. So yeah, really good changes for the donation costs across the board here. Maps 2 through 6 are also getting something called an Ascendancy buff that I think is going to be really fun for a lot of players. It's a global node that affects the players and not the enemies. So yeah, the players are finally getting a buff, and it's going to be pretty interesting, where a primary class type, essentially chosen at random, is going to get a 20% attack boost, and a secondary class type is going to get a 10% attack boost for maps 2 through 4. Then for maps 5 and 6, it's going to be an even bigger boost, where the primary class type is going to get a plus 30% attack boost, secondary is going to get a plus 15%, and there is an attack penalty for one of the classes as well, but it's only minus 10%. Like, that's not even as much as the class disadvantage gives you. So yeah, minus 10% is really not even going to be noticeable. Of course, you're going to want to select a class that is getting this plus 30% boost, and I think that's the whole point of this system here, is to get players trying some different champions that they might not have otherwise have picked up. Like, let's say it's a plus 30% tech boost, and you've heard players talk about how good Sentinel is, but you don't really know what the big deal is about the champion because you haven't really played him yourself. Well, now would be a good time to try him out. And it is a little bit riskier playing champions than you know, playing champions that are a little bit out of your comfort zone, but I recommend just trying out the new champion on day 1, and if it doesn't work out, then just go back to your normal champions on the other days. Even if they have this weakness, you're not even going to feel it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Also looking forward to, let's say your main champion is Domino. I'm looking forward to the days where it's a plus 30% mutant boost, and you still get to run your normal champion, but now you just feel like a god running through the map with an additional plus 30% attack. I think there's going to be some cool videos posted to Reddit for things like that, where people are just destroying the bosses and stuff like that. So yeah, really fun changes overall for that Ascendancy global buff to players system. All right, the Glory Store is being updated where the cost for rank up materials is being reduced across the board. The potions are not being reduced in cost. This is probably what I spend the bulk of my Glory on, these level 4 Alliance Health potions. But still really good to see that other things are being reduced in cost. And there's also the addition of a few different items that you can pick up that you can choose from. This one right here is probably the standout for a lot of the endgame players, where there's an addition of tier 5 basic fragments. It's not a lot, you only get 900, and it is kind of a steep glory cost for each one of these, each 900 that you do pick up, but it is something. You know, it's you're not going to be ranking up champions just off of picking these things up, but it is going to help you to get to the next rank up a little bit quicker, so that's cool. There's also the addition of Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 class catalysts. It seems like they're going to be on a rotating system, and it looks like you can only pick up one each time they're in the store. And honestly, it's probably still better just to run the catalyst daily if you are trying to target a certain class type, but at least this does give players another option to pick these things up. And yeah, maybe you don't mind spending a little bit of glory to add a few of these to your crystal stash, and then you could pop them open as needed, type of thing. So it's cool that Kabam is at least giving another option for those. The ranked rewards are seeing an update as well. You know, Tier 5 Basic have now been added to the ranked rewards for the top 1,200 alliances. There's also some buffs to the other rewards that people are already seeing in, you know, in the ranked rewards. So that's cool. All really good changes there. And that's pretty much it for anything that's going to affect players outside of the new Map 7. The majority of this post is talking about Map 7 just because it is the new map. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. Oh, actually, one more thing that is going to affect a lot of players. There is going to be a free week of Alliance Quest. It's not starting immediately. If we scroll all the way down here, the free week is actually going to start on let's see, where was that at? The following week. Here we go. Beginning on February 24th. So the AQ cycle that starts on February 24th is going to be completely free. So yeah, that's also nice, right? But all right, let's talk about Map 7 now. So Map 7, you know, there was a few pieces of feedback that I gave while participating in the beta. I spent quite a bit of time in there, and I'm happy to see that some things in the beta, you know, stayed true to what we're getting on the live servers, and I'm also not quite as happy about some of the other things. So first off, let's take a look at the map. I really like the map layout for Map 7. I just like how it's symmetrical. I like how it's relatively easy to follow, especially as you get to sections 2 and 3. Section 1 is a little bit weird, but I still think it's better than the layout of something like Map 6, for example, where if you ever look at the map for Map 6, it's not symmetrical at all. It's a little bit confusing in certain sections of where to go. I feel like it's easier for players to kind of not realize where exactly they are on the map and accidentally take a wrong path. So yeah, I'm happy about the layout. One thing that I'm not so happy about is the section breakdown here, where there's 9 paths in section 1, 10 in section 2, 10 in section 3. I must have miscounted on the beta, and I thought there was only 7 paths, but it is in fact 9 paths in section 1. And the only thing that I don't really like about this, I don't mind that there's 10 paths in section 3, but in section 2, where, you know, especially depending on where you are in the world or what your sleep schedule is like, it can be a little bit difficult to have to deal with section 2 and unlink other players. And yeah, I just feel like coordinating that stuff is not quite so fun. So I was hoping the breakdown would be something closer to like 8, 8, 10 ideally. But the fact that it's 9, 10, 10, it's you know, it's not that big of a deal. I just thought it'd be nice, especially for the international players, if it was something like 8, 8, 10, just to make it a little bit less of an annoyance to get through the map. But you know, at the end of the day, I don't think that's that big of a deal. It's not really a deal breaker for me or anything like that. Map 7 is getting the same Ascendancy buff system, but it's going to be a little bit of a bigger buff and a little bit of a bigger penalty for Map 7 as well. So Map 7, the primary class is getting plus 40%, secondary is getting plus 20%, and the penalty class is seeing a minus 40% attack penalty. And again, I've tried this out on the beta. Even running the class with the penalty, it was still doable. It just kind of pushes you into wanting to run the classes that are getting this boost, pushes you into wanting to have multiple teams instead of just sticking to the same team every single time and getting bored with running the same team every time. So yeah, I'm actually a huge fan of this. It makes ranking up different champions more fun. So looking forward to that. There is a different type of buff that's affecting the players in map 7 exclusively. These fury buffs that you get for just playing the fight a little bit differently than you might have otherwise played it. For example, this foresight node here, intercepting grants you a fury, and it's probably, you know, it's honestly, for me, it's still not worth trying to intercept to get that fury, just because I'm not that good at it. So I rather play it safe and not intercept. But anybody who is, you're going to get rewarded for it. This juke node up here is probably my favorite one, where you gain a fury when ending a combo with a light or medium, and you lose a fury when ending a combo with the same attack twice in a row. So a little bit of a similar concept to fighting against Sentinel, where you're trying to kind of alternate your combos and you prevent Sentinel from getting analysis charges. Well, in this case, you alternate your combos and you're gaining a buff for it. So it's a little bit different than Sentinel in how you gain the buff. It's only the ending combo, or only the ending hit that matters of your combo, but you're still rewarded for it, and yeah, I think that's cool. So those are all good. There's a lot of new nodes that the enemies are getting here. Some of them are quite specific in how you need to counter them, and I think in a single player mode, you know, these might not work out in all areas of the game, but the fact that you're working together with 9 other people in your battle group, you know, between the 10 of you, I'm sure somebody has counters for everything available in here, especially if you've reached the point of the game where you're running map 7. So yeah, I think those are fine. I think they're actually good because it lets people rank up some more unique options rather than just sticking with the standard options that everybody goes with. For example, there's shock nodes, and yeah, it's going to allow people to rank up some shock champions. Then again, I think Corvus handles that, so maybe that was a bad example, but you know, there are some unique rank ups that are going to take place just due to these nodes. The boss, it's not going to be rotating for map 7, it's just Omega Red. The best way to deal with Omega Red is to run a robot champion, a high DPS robot champion, ideally with heal block. So Sentinel and Darkhawk are going to be the go-tos. If you have either of those, you're just going to steamroll Omega Red, honestly. Kingpin, you don't need a specific counter to Kingpin. It's a pretty standard fight against him. You know, just baiting out special ones to get your openings, and that's pretty much it. It's just a long fight just because there's a lot of health, but other than that, you know, it really wasn't too bad at all. Here's where we come to one of the problems about map 7 in my opinion though, and before I continue, I should say that the remainder of this video is going to be talking just about the costs for map 7. So if you have no desire to run map 7, now is a really good time to exit the video. The rest of this update for 99.9% of players out there is an amazing one. I think players are really going to enjoy it, have fun with it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video and all that. But for anybody who does care about the cost for map 7, I have kind of a lot to say about it. So I feel like players are already at their limits, already at their breaking points when it comes to donations for running 5 days of map 6. And to run 5 days of map 7, the costs are going up by a lot. Not just by a small amount, by a lot. The battle chips are actually not being increased in cost, but the gold and loyalty are. And it's only if you're going to try to run a lot of days of map 7. If you're in map 6 alliance where you run 5 days of map 6 and you're trying to run 5 days of map 7, you know, it's those few alliances that are being impacted by this, which I don't even think there are many. You know, if I had to guess how many alliances are running 5 days of map 6 today, I would put the number around maybe 50 or so, maybe 60 or something like that. I don't know. It's a little bit hard to gauge that type of thing without looking at any numbers. And if I had to guess how many alliances would have even a chance at getting through all 5 days of map 7 with the increased difficulty, I would put that number at maybe about 10. So we're talking about a very, very small amount of players that this is affecting. But for those players that this does affect, it is just going to push them out of the game. It is going to lead to more player burnout when players are already at their breaking points as it is. And I don't think it has to be that way. Like, you can add map 7 without the burnout and just get the best of both worlds. When Kabam added map 6 and it was a steep cost increase versus map 5, you could definitely make a case for it being a bad move back then, but at least it made more sense at the time, in my opinion, because there really wasn't much to do in the game. It was basically Alliance Quest, and players competed to have the highest level of prestige, and they would get the best rewards, and that was pretty much it, right? There were no Alliance Wars seasons. Alliance Wars did exist, but there were no seasons, so it was much less competitive, much less costly. The bonus content that we get each month, there was a lot less of that, and what we did get seemed to be a lot less challenging. Every once in a while we'd get a celebrity challenge event, which was pretty tough, but there were large gaps between those where we didn't see any challenging content. Whereas today, Kabam seems to be able to roll out this content to us at a much faster pace to keep us, interested in the game, and I really enjoy that content. Like, it's great that Kabam was able to add that, but it does take away time, right? And I think it takes it away in a good way, right? It takes it away. It's kind of like it can replace some of this monotonous grind with more interesting things to do. But instead of kind of taking away some of that grind, in this case, it feels like they just doubled down on it. It's just like, nope, we added all this cool content for you to do, but also we want you to keep grinding even harder than before, even though you have less time than ever and less resources because of what Alliance Wars takes and all that. So yeah, it just feels really silly to me at this point to increase the cost. Even back then, it was easier to get featured champions from the arena. So even something like the arena, it was top 400 back then versus today's top 150. So every area of the game has become more time consuming to get the rewards, but still an increase in donation costs where it shouldn't be. In my opinion, when Alliance War Seasons came out, that would have been the perfect time to have the massive reductions that we're seeing today. And I think there were some reductions over time for the maps. I honestly can't remember. But it would have been a great time to just slash the donation costs with the introduction of seasons. I think that would have helped a lot of players to not burn out. Because at least, with the increased amount of time they have to spend in war, at least you're kind of getting some of that time back with not needing so many resources to participate in Alliance Quest. I never really considered that until thinking about the map 7 cost, but in my opinion, it makes sense with how the game's evolved. Plus, back then, when map 6 was first introduced, the reward structure was totally different. At the time, essentially the biggest resource that you can get was tier 4 class catalysts. That's something that you can get regularly, at least. I think tier 2 alpha were in the game, but only in special circumstances. But tier 4 class catalysts was something so incredibly difficult to get at the time. There were no glory crystals, there were no fragment crystals. You either got the whole thing or you got nothing. I mean, I guess you got a little bit of fragments from the map crystals, but it was such a small amount where if you didn't get the full catalyst, it really felt like you were doing nothing at the time. Map 6 was added as a way to if you were pushing hard enough, you could kind of jump the rankings without having the increased prestige. That was impossible to get because you couldn't get the tier 4 class catalyst. So at the time, it even made more sense in a competitive sense. Whereas today, even without running the highest level maps, you can still get all of the rank up materials that you need in order to increase your prestige. And if you wanted to compete on like a prestige level, you could certainly do that. Or even if you didn't want to do that, it's nowhere near as necessary today as it was back then. So yeah, the whole thing just makes a lot less sense today to increase the cost than it did back then. Which again, you could even make the argument that back then it wasn't a good idea. But certainly today, I do not think it's a good idea at all. So how much are these donation costs being increased, and what is the game going to look like for players going forward who are trying to go from 5 days of map 6 to 5 days of map 7? Well, the current cost to run 5 days of map 6 before all the changes go through is 500,000 gold per AQ cycle. That's being increased by 33%. 33% on top of the 500k. That's going to sink those players who were struggling to stay afloat as it is and keeping up with the donations and actually having some gold to rank up their champions, those players are done. They don't have a chance. And you could say, okay, well, they need to grind more arena to get that gold then. But at what point is it okay to say that? How much arena do you want people to grind? Because I would have to step up my arena game. I wouldn't be able to afford the new donation costs with the amount of time I currently put into the game. And we're just talking about opening up the map. We're not talking about taking on the newest challenge. We're talking about just time required to open up the map. It's crazy, man. Again, especially with all of the other things that have been added to the game that are already taking away some time. And a lot of those things were cool things, were welcome things to the game. All these different new challenges that have come out, but they do take away time. There's less time to grind, and yet the donation costs, they're still somehow going up, and by a significant amount like this. The loyalty is even more baffling. It's going up by 50%. And the loyalty is something that we can't just say, oh, just go spend an hour in the loyalty arena and get your loyalty. You can't even do that, right? There's a fixed amount of loyalty that each player gets in this game, and it fluctuates a tiny bit depending on your alliance's win percentage in Alliance War, but it really doesn't go up or down very much. Most players have a pretty steady amount of loyalty that they get, and yeah, you could say, okay, maybe don't spend loyalty on anything else ever again. Never spend loyalty on a single 3-minute boost. Never spend loyalty on any of the class boosts. Never spend on anything. And even still, I think you would just barely have enough, or maybe not even have enough loyalty to cover this. So you got to find some other way to supplement those loyalty donations. How would you do that? Well, players are already struggling to keep up with loyalty, so they're already supplementing their loyalty through the conversion badge, and they're donating their loyalty in units. So now it's going to be even more units that have to get spent on these donations, which, by the way, just to run map 7 is going to take more units because it's going to require you to use more items. So that cost is already there. It doesn't need to be there just to open up the map, right? Leave the difficulty, leave the cost to the actual gameplay itself. So that's already there, but players are going to have to spend more units on that, or the players who were able to maintain their loyalty are now going to have to start spending units on that. The players who don't have conversion badges, because that is something that's only available after you spend some money in this game, are going to have to find another method, and what I would have to do is grind even more arena, so that way I could trade battle chips with somebody who would cover part of the loyalty cost. I would cover their battle chip donations, and then they would cover part of my loyalty cost if I could find somebody to do that, which I probably could. So it's possible. Yeah, it's possible, but is it a fun game anymore? I don't think so. And then there's another method for getting loyalty that other players have already started to do as well, where you make a secondary account, you make an alternate account, and you play that account a little bit more casually, but you still have to play it to just build up loyalty, to then funnel that loyalty over to your main account. You can't directly give that loyalty to your main account, but you can step out of the alliance on your main account, bring in your alternate account, dump all the loyalty that you've built up, leave and rejoin with your main account, and that will cover your loyalty donations. So I mean, does that sound like a fun game, having to have this second account just to do that? Like, I don't know, man, it doesn't sound so fun to me. It kind of reminds me, I'm sorry, I'm going to go into a little bit of a story time here, I always do, but it kind of reminds me of something that I heard one of the Diablo 3 developers say. It's always about Diablo, right? They were one of the developers was doing like a live Q&A session with somebody while they were, while that person was streaming Diablo 3, and the streamer was in like a little bit of a leveling tournament where they were trying to level up as quickly as possible, and they got to this one point where the fastest way to level up was basically clearing out this little church that had like a large cluster of enemies that gave a pretty good amount of experience. You clear that, you exit the game, you rejoin the game, and you just do that over and over and over again. It's like a 30-second loop that you're just continuously doing to get this experience. And I remember the developers saying something along the lines of, man, I hate that you're just doing this right now. And the streamer was like, "Oh, sorry, this is probably pretty boring to watch, huh?" And he was like, "Well, no, it's not that. It's just that we tried to create these other really cool areas of the game for players to play in, but the most efficient way to play the game is just by doing what you're doing, this 30-second loop." So, I mean, I don't necessarily think that developers want us to be approaching games like this, where the most efficient thing to do is to make an alternate account to farm this loyalty. But at the end of the day, that is the most efficient thing to do. You could say, well, just don't play as many days of map 7, but that's not what would be efficient with our time, right? Like, after you do Alliance Quest, after you do Alliance War, after you do your regular quest, then what do you go to then? Then you go to something like Arena that is time consuming, but it is something that you could repeatedly do, right? But do you get like tier 5 basic from Arena? No. But you can get tier 5 basic if you make a secondary account and just farm up some loyalty on the side, and you can funnel that to your main account and then continue to do map 7 and continue to get the best rewards that way. Like, those things are possible. That would be the most efficient thing to do. If I was making a guide, I would tell people, hey, make a second account. But I don't think that's fun. You know, I think the game can be designed in a way that you don't need a second account, and I'm not asking for Kabam to make some type of system where they prevent somebody from having this second account or something like that. Like, don't even go through all that trouble. Just design the game in such a way that people don't need to rely on these outside sources from your main account to just to be able to keep up for something like loyalty. It's just pretty silly in my opinion. And I kind of understand conceptually of why there's a limit on these resources, right? It's just like a limit on any other resource in the game, where you have to make these choices. You have to make these interesting choices of who you're going to be leveling up, of what areas of the game you're going to be focusing in. But take away these resource costs, and all that stuff is still there. Like, it's not an interesting choice between putting your loyalty into Alliance War, where you're getting these very powerful boosts to help you win an Alliance War, or a choice to play Alliance Quest. No, players are just going to find a way to do both. And if players want to focus on one or the other, it should be through their rank up decisions, not through this loyalty resource, right? Because if you want to focus on Alliance Quest, then you're not going to be ranking up as powerful defenders. You're not going to have as many resources because you're going to have to use more potions and more items to get through map 7 versus, you know, being able to consistently keep up an Alliance War. Or you can choose to say, forget map 7, just going to do a lower level map, but focus everything. We want to be the best Alliance War team possible. You still make those interesting choices without having to have this donation cost here to limit you on how many days you can run this certain map. And the cost is still there. You know, I know people are going to say, well, you want to play at the highest level. You gotta pay the price, man. You gotta pay them those donation costs. But these players are already putting in more time as it is. It's already draining to get these the newest champions, draining time-wise in the arena or money-wise with featured Grandmaster crystals, or all the SIG levels that you need to get for these champions to keep up with prestige. That cost is already there, and the item cost within the maps. We don't need this extra donation cost on top of it, in my opinion. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I left a bunch of feedback on the forums. You know, Kabam did say that they were listening to the feedback, so I don't know if they're going to make any changes, but yeah, I just wanted to share these thoughts with you guys as well. I really do think that, you know, Kabam has been improving this game for a while, but there's just certain things that feel like haven't improved, and in this case, almost feels like it's going backwards, where again, they added all of these cool different areas of the game to play and have fun with, but they still are increasing this cost and forcing people to spend even more time in the game, where players are they've already reached that point and probably overextended past that point into some level of burnout. So hopefully Kabam reconsiders and you know, lowers the donation costs. Let the difficulty be the barrier here, or the rank up decisions that you make be the barrier. Or if they wanted to implement some type of limitation, I think that's fine too. If they really wanted to limit us to not be able to run 5 days of map 7, I think that's okay too if they came up with some other way to limit it other than just requiring such an increased amount of resources. But all right, I've kind of rambled on here long enough. We'll see what happens. Again, this doesn't really affect many people. 99.9% of the player base. Awesome update. I think there's just a little bit of an oversight on this one area, this one topic specifically. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.